Story recapped here. Today, I'm going to explain a horror, mystery, and thriller film called The Woods. Spoilers ahead, watch out, and take care. In 1965, a rebellious teenager, Heather Fasulo, defiantly burns a tree in their yard. Because of that, her parents Alice and Joe decide to take her to a boarding school in the middle of the woods called Fallburn Academy. As soon as they arrive at the academy, the headmistress, Miss Traverse, welcomes them. Heather doesn't even speak a word, so Miss Traverse proceeds to take them on a short tour around the school. She then asks Heather if she's into sports, making the girl excited, but Alice tells the headmistress that Heather must focus on her academics first. A little while later, the headmistress excuses Heather for an interview while her parents deal with her tuition fee with another professor, Miss Leland. In her office, Miss Traverse reviews Heather's records and finds out that Heather set their tree on fire because of a disagreement with her mother, warning Heather that their school is not for wayward girls. Miss Traverse then offers Heather a scholarship since her parents cannot afford the tuition fee, so she leaves the girl alone to take an exam that will determine if she's gifted. Heather quickly answers the test as soon as the headmistress is gone, and the small cut she gets from fixing her test papers gives her an odd feeling. Finally, Miss Traverse returns to provide Heather with her uniform and checks her papers, utterly amazed by all of her answers. Then, with a heavy heart, Heather bids her parents goodbye. Later that day, a teacher with a twitching problem, Miss Mackinac, takes Heather to the dining hall, where the other students immediately talk about her. The girls also talk about another student, Anne Wales, wondering where she is. There, Heather meets Marcy Turner, and as they get to know each other, a mean girl named Samantha Wise approaches them. Marcy then introduces Heather to Samantha, and the girl casually makes fun of Heather for having red hair. Unbothered, Heather mocks her back, so Samantha spills her milk on Marcy to see if she'll protest. That night, Heather sleeps in their dormitory and wakes up after dreaming about some girls running in the woods, asking her to release them. She then gets up and notices a girl crying on her bed, and as Heather approaches her, she realizes that she's covered with blood. The girl continues to cry as she claims that someone else will have to sleep there, grabbing Heather's hand all of a sudden and scaring her. Then, another student appears and chops off the girl's hand with an axe, and when she's about to strike, it terrified Heather too. Heather finally wakes up from her nightmare. The following day, Heather asks Marcy about the vacant bed in the room, to which Marcy replies it belongs to Anne Wales. Marcy says Anne is sent to the hospital for trying to kill herself, leaving blood all over their classroom. The girls then go to their respective classes, but Heather is late after Samantha and her friends bully her in the ladies' room. Because of that, Miss Mackinac scolds Heather for her tardiness and sends her to Miss Traverse's office to inform the headmistress of her infraction. However, instead of apologizing for her mistake, Heather asks Miss Traverse to let her parents take her back. The headmistress then lets Heather call her parents, and when she begs her uninterested mother to allow her to return home, Alice tells her to stop being a weakling and make her proud. Once their conversation ends, Miss Traverse tells Heather that she'll excuse her truancy and orders that she returns to class, but instead of listening to the headmistress, Heather heads to the woods. Darkness falls, and Heather soon finds herself lost in the woods. She also gets scared when she hears voices and sees girls there, confused whether she's actually seeing things or just hallucinating. Scared, Heather runs through the woods screaming until she reaches her school again, where all the professors wait for her. The teachers only look at Heather as she quietly walks past them, unaware that Samantha is watching them. Exhausted, Heather goes to bed and is comforted by Marcy, who also warns her not to go to the woods since it's unsafe. Marcy then shares her Walkman with Heather, and eventually the two grow closer with each other. Miss Traverse even notices that Heather is finally adjusting to her new environment, and she learns just to ignore Samantha. While playing volleyball with her classmates one day, Heather again hears the strange voices after their ball bounces towards the woods. However, she decides it's better if she doesn't go there. That night, the girls talk about Clara Thompson and her two sisters, thinking they might be the reason why Anne had tried to kill herself. They say that the three sisters had just walked out of the woods one day and came to their school almost 100 years ago, causing strange things to happen. The sisters were always looking off to the trees and hearing voices that only they could hear, and soon, the other students caught them practicing a ritual inside the school and accused them of being witches. Terrified, the students taunted and beat the sisters, forcing Claire to ask the woods for help to punish anyone who had done them wrong. Claire offered the students souls in return, and days later, the girls chased the sisters into the forest. However, something unexplainable happened there. For later that night, Claire led the girls out of the woods as if they were under her spell. They then watched Claire as she chopped up their headmistress to pieces, telling her they were proud of her. The girls also joined Claire in her gruesome act before dumping the headmistress's body in the well, and although it all happened a long time ago, the students still believe that Clara still roams the woods at night, Later that evening, the students watch as one of their classmates, Barb, bravely makes her way to the woods. However, Miss Traverse arrives before she can even make it past the trees, sending all the girls back to their dormitory. The next day, Miss Leland accompanies Heather to a small greenhouse before Miss Traverse joins her for advanced class. Miss Traverse wonders why Heather's mother sent her there, and while Heather believes it's because her mother hates her, the headmistress thinks it's because Alice is scared of her daughter. Heather then starts having visitors and hearing voices again, asking her to kill her mother, and Miss Traverse gets fascinated as she watches a clueless Heather balance herself on her chair. When Heather finally snaps out of it and asks the headmistress what just happened, Miss Traverse only evades her question and apologizes for frightening her. Then, Heather finds Samantha standing outside the greenhouse, and as always, the girl taunts her and says that she's not special. She even tells Heather she looks like she's seen or heard a ghost, but before Heather can answer, Miss Traverse interrupts their conversation. In class, Heather listens to a disembodied voice as she balances her pencil and eraser on the table. After some time, Anne finally returns to school, and Heather can't help but remember her dream about her. As they eat, she then asks Marcy if she's heard or seen anything strange at their school, but Samantha once again shows up and disturbs the two. Samantha and Heather quickly get into a heated argument, with Samantha telling her they have a certain way of doing things there. Samantha also advises Heather to figure out which way that is if she doesn't want to suffer the consequences before splashing her milk on Marcy's face. Fed up, Heather punches Samantha and gets in a struggle with her, but it isn't long before their teachers show up and stop their fight. Miss Mackinac then takes Heather to Miss Traverse's office, where the headmistress slaps her for causing trouble and tells her the same thing Samantha has told her earlier. That night, as everyone sleeps, Heather approaches Anne and introduces herself to her. She also notices Anne's injured wrist but keeps quiet about it, and the girl tells Heather she's there because she's special like her and Marcy. Anne cries as she reveals that everyone will be killed if they don't do what they want, confusing Heather as to who she's talking about. After that, Anne starts feeling cold, so Heather climbs on a trunk to close the window. However, a low fog begins to fill the room and vines pull the trunk Heather is standing on, causing her to fall and injure her ankle. Teachers then show up to see what's happening, and while one of them helps Anne back to bed, the other takes Heather to the infirmary. Heather then wakes up with a bruised ankle the next day, and when she returns to their dormitory and apologizes to Marcy for being noisy the previous night, her friend tells her she doesn't know what she's talking about. When the other girls leave for breakfast, Heather discovers that Anne is gone, and her bed is filled with dead leaves. Later on, Miss Traverse announces Anne is missing and assures the students that the authorities are searching for her, before reminding everyone to be safe. One morning, Heather wakes up early and notices their music teacher giving Marcy a cup of tea, telling her to perfect the song that she's been practicing. Later on, Samantha confronts Heather and tells her they need to talk. That same day, Heather sees the sheriff arriving at their school to return Anne's necklace from the hospital. However, Heather gets confused when the headmistress lies and tells him that Anne is still in the academy and being taken care of. She quickly tells Marcy what she's just heard, but her friend isn't in the mood to talk. Marcy then assures Heather that Anne is fine and telling her to leave her alone before they part ways. Irritated, Heather goes through Marcy's belongings and destroys her Walkman, leaving all its broken pieces to balance on the chest. Meanwhile, Miss Traverse arrives and witnesses the whole thing, including Heather's passing out and injuring her ankle. After some time, the students are continuously encouraged to drink their milk, unaware that their teachers are making them drink something else. The school staff also transfers Marcy to Anne's bed, and just like what happened a few nights ago, a low fog fills the room, and vines slither on the floor. Heather decides to investigate what's happening, but she passes out upon hearing a voice that tells her to sleep. In the morning, Heather realizes that Marcy is gone and her bed is filled with dry leaves too. She gets upset with her roommates after they failed to see what's happened, but Miss Mackinac shows up and assures her they'll find Marcy. Later that day, Heather searches for Marcy in the woods, where Samantha ambushes and warns her about the teachers. She says she's tired warning her about Marcy, but the teachers are always watching. Samantha says she's contacted Heather's father to get her home before they take her too, explaining that the teachers look for who to abduct by giving them scholarship exams. Samantha also informs Heather that she's the key to freeing all the souls trapped in the woods, just like Clara Thompson was. Samantha has something else to tell Heather when Miss Leland shows up and interrupts them, so Samantha whispers to her not to drink the milk before being led away by their teacher. That afternoon, the school descends into chaos when they discover Samantha's dead body hanging from the dining hall ceiling. Miss Traverse immediately confronts Heather and asks what she's told Samantha, but the girl only says she knows that they've been abducting students. Exasperated, Miss Traverse explains that Samantha was a very confused girl. She also says that Anne and Marcy just ran away and will surely come back, but Heather doesn't believe her. Before Miss Traverse leaves, Heather tells her she's not crazy just because she sees and hears things, and the headmistress agrees with her, saying it's because she's special. After that, Heather sees an opportunity to inform the sheriff about Anne and Marcy's disappearance when he arrives at the school to talk about Samantha, making him upset that the headmistress didn't tell him about it. With no other choice, Miss Traverse tells him that 2 other students went missing after they'd found Samantha, adding that she didn't want to cause him any more trouble. Miss Mackinac then takes Heather away, and Miss Traverse asks Miss Leland to escort the man to the woods, where she claims the 2 girls were last seen. Unfortunately, the vines kill the sheriff, leaving no one to search for the missing students. Meanwhile, Heather finds Marcy and Samantha's exam papers, realizing that they'd taken the scholarship test too. After some time, Heather's parents arrive to pick her up, despite Miss Traverse's protests. However, the vines from the woods attack them on their way home, leaving Heather unconscious. Meanwhile, Jo tries to help Alice as she gets dragged out of the vehicle by the vines, eventually getting kicked and knocked out by her while she struggles. At the back of the car, a dizzy Heather regains consciousness and sees her mother hitting the ground before passing out again. Heather then wakes up the next day in a hospital and quickly looks for her parents, and upon finding her father alone in a room, she realizes that her mother is dead. Devastated, Heather starts crying, and Miss Traverse eventually has her taken away and restrained. She then explains to Jo that Heather hasn't been fully examined yet, and as he talks about the accident, she cuts her hand and forcibly makes him drink her thick, black blood. Finally, Jo stops fighting back after consuming enough blood. While in another room, the doctor successfully sedates Heather. Later on, Miss Traverse takes Heather back to school, but not before she sees her father in a catatonic state. Taking advantage of Heather's depression, Miss Traverse orders Heather to balance some stones on the table, and she does it easily while balancing herself on her chair too. That night, Heather drinks her milk before going to their dormitory, where she learns that she's been transferred to Anne's bed. However, Heather finds it hard to sleep and gets up to throw up in the middle of the night, realizing there's black blood in her milk and a dry leaf in her mouth. She then quickly dresses up and uses her bed to escape through the window, but the vines outside attack and try to take her away. Luckily, Heather manages to escape and the other girls don't even hear the commotion. Scared, Heather locks herself in the ladies' room and breaks the glass to defend herself, but more vines come through the bathroom window and attack her. Meanwhile, in the hospital, Jo throws up Miss Traverse's black blood and finds a twig in his mouth. As soon as he gets back to his senses, Jo steals someone's car and leaves. Back at the campus, Heather wakes up wrapped in vines and sees Marcy and Anne bound beside her too. Heather is also unaware that the vines are slowly taking the girls in school, only realizing that Claire and her sisters are inhabiting Miss Traverse and the other teachers' bodies. Miss Traverse then begins the ceremony by making Marcy sing their ritual song and ordering Heather to balance the big stones, not knowing that her father is trying to get inside the school. All the while, Heather sees her mother, who tells her that she's proud of her. Miss Traverse asks the souls of the woods to enter the girls' bodies as their new vessels, not realizing that Jo is finally inside the academy. Using the axe he's found, Jo attacks one of the teachers that's holding the girls captive, but the vines defend the woman and attack him. However, that doesn't stop Heather from taking her father's weapon and striking another teacher before freeing herself from the vines. Meanwhile, Miss Traverse disappears into the darkness, mocking Heather all the time. One by one, Heather manages to kill her teachers and she gets disgusted when mud gushes out of their wounds. Finally, Heather gets rid of Miss Traverse when the headmistress tries to attack her from behind, and she fails to control herself as she repeatedly hacks the woman's body. Inside the school, the vines slowly let go of the girls and return to the woods, and eventually, they burn the school to the ground. However, the trees surrounding the area remain untouched by the fire. Heather may have killed all the witches, but it looks like their spirits just returned to the woods. They've been living there for ages already, and a few years of waiting for their next victims will be just like a blink of an eye to them.
This is all for Story Recap for today. Subscribe to watch more videos like this. Tell us in the comments if you want us to recap your favorite movie. Watch other of our videos showing on the screen and leave a like because it helps the channel. And I would see you in the next video. Goodbye.